Gender Stereotyping and Conflict Resolution by Jennifer Stege, Psych 499. Gender is a key aspect of identity that is shaped not only by biology but also by societal and cultural norms that show one how to act properly. One might recognize some of these rules through popular sayings such as, "A lady always crosses her legs," or "Real men never cry." Both of these are norms that society says are not to be violated and are examples of cultural pressure towards individuals to behave their gender. In the past, the consequences for violating these rules were swift and harsh. Joan of Arc, for instance, was condemned to burn, partially due to the fact that she wore men's clothes. There's always been a macho gender role that men are expected to play a big role in particularly men in power, act, how they traits that come along with this macho orientation, and even how they're usually stereotyped as strength and aggression. This presentation will look at how the of the macho leader does not usually have a collaborative or a democratic approach to it. Harmful attitudes. The image that is conjured when one thinks of the macho man is not someone who sits around and asks for other people's opinions, but rather it's the image of a general making decisions for his army. The purpose of this fight being to win. The idea of a macho man can be found in the way that young men describe ideal adulthood. For example, when determining what traits they think that a real man would possess, adolescent white males in South Africa chose traits of dominance, power, strength, and toughness. Agentic or hierarchical methods of management. This perception also carries into the corporate world, where men generally are seen making unilateral decisions and having a more agentic and hierarchical orientation towards conflict resolution that emphasizes the needs of the self over the needs of the subordinates. This need of the self translates to an independent, ambitious, and competitive style of conflict negotiation. This is the stereotypical gender normative behavior generally expected of men in conflict. This method of leadership relies more on authority, and this leadership attitude can be summed up in the phrase, "because I said so." This type of management typically addresses the facts of the situation rather than the feelings. And apologies from offenders are usually not of male methods of conflict resolution. Men have also been the phrase that we mentioned earlier, "real men don't cry," is a cliché that has been used many times in promoting the stereotype that men are not okay for men to express avoidant attitude wherein they avoid or ignore conflicts going on around them, social scripts in hopes that the transactional interaction without their intervention. And we could argue that the pervasive nature of the men don't cry cliché is reinforced through socialization with other John Hatfield in 1996. Demonstrates the consequence of relying on a stereotypically male method of conflict resolution feelings as much as women are. In this study, why they typically report having less surveyed about job satisfaction as well as management. This lack of cultural support for the concept there was a significant correlation between may damage men's ability to be effective mediators during satisfaction. Successful mediation, the study found that resolution relies greatly on mutual respect. Is the autocratic management style a result of male privilege? Only when both parties respect each other. However, this mutual respect is not typical when there is an imbalance of power between two groups. Resolution take place. When this happens, autocratic management styles, wherein the needs of the less powerful group are not taken into consideration, typically take over. Researchers argue that this unquestioned management style is frequently used to keep the in-group in power and the out-group subservient. An example of this can be seen in the traditionally male-dominated Science and Technology Center. In a report in the Harvard Business Review, women were said to be leaving the field increasingly, due not only to a hostile work environment, but also to an unsure path forward. Notably, 40% of women surveyed felt that they were stuck in their current positions, and nearly 63% surveyed had experienced sexual harassment at their job. This is an example of the social dominance gradually eroded as time more powerful with previously managers were privileged, actively limits the opportunities of another generation in order to maintain the superiority and opportunity is making their voices heard about everything from the tasks they're expected to complete. As this glass ceiling is breaking and more women are getting into positions of power, researchers are finding that women are adopting more dominant and typically male style of conflict. However, many companies are now trying to adapt this to their expectations. This indicates that perhaps autocratic and directive management styles may not come exclusively from gender roles themselves, but rather from the nature of power. Along with this new generation's desire to question the old, corporations are also gradually realizing that the old dominant authoritarian methods of conflict resolution lead to less employee satisfaction and more turnover. Studies done in China recently support this link, as subordinates surveyed reported that the subordinates who rated their manager styles as dominant or avoidant were less satisfied with their job and more likely to leave it. More and more, the
studies have
importance of
shown
trust
that
and
women are better
empathy are
able
being
to read
recognized in
nonverbal body
maintaining a happy
language.
workplace and a
All of these
content
stereotypically
workforce.
female attributes mirror effective aspects of conflict resolution, such as collaboration and empathy. All of these advantages correlate to women being extremely effective mediators, and as a result, have the potential to be extremely effective managers. Indeed, in one survey, women who had less or equal power as the disputants in the workplace were found to mediate conflict in a more satisfactory way by both parties. As well, the solutions that they came up with were found to be longer lasting. However, women are also associated with counterproductive behaviors when faced with conflict. One such stereotype is the woman-hating female. This woman is characterized as a backstabber who actively sabotages other women in order to climb the corporate ladder. This stereotype is contrary to how society wishes women to behave at work and goes against society's ideals for women as kind and gentle mother figures. Indeed, aggressive and ambitious behaviors that would be applauded in a man are often disparaged in women. In fact, women who do achieve career advancement, even when rated competent, are rated lower on traditionally feminine traits such as warmth by both the men and women surveyed. This rating implies that in order to succeed in the traditionally corporate world, people believe that a woman sacrifices traditionally feminine traits. However, as previously discussed, these feminine traits are also related to positive conflict resolution styles.
Women as backstabbers. The negative stereotype of women as backstabbers is further supported through the unilateral approach to conflict resolution that usually characterize women-on-women conflicts in the workplace. An example of this in action would be a teacher who is upset by the noise in another teacher's classroom, but may go to the principal instead of talking directly with the teacher making the noise. This method usually does not involve direct confrontation and instead invokes the interference of an outside authority to resolve conflict. Unsurprisingly, this idea of indirectly solving the problem by going behind someone's back can create negative feelings in the workplace. Among young adult women surveyed, they report using unilateral strategies 46% of the times when dealing with workplace conflict. This reliance on indirect methods of confrontation has led to the stereotype that the majority of women actively sabotage each other. This tendency has even been given a name: the queen bee
Cultural
syndrome.
origins of female methods
This is a
of conflict
derogatory
resolution.
term for women who ascend
As
the
mentioned
corporate
earlier,
ladder
cultural
and then
norms
seek to
that separate
sabotage
men and
other
women
women
gender
who could threaten their
stereotypes
power
permit
or
the
place
use
in
and
the
expression
ranks.
of feelings in
An
women
example
more
of this
frequently than
idea
it does in
of
men.
women as enemies of each
This
other
greater
could be seen
facility and
even through
ability to
classic
express
fairy
feelings
tales,
also leads to a
such
greater
as Snow
sense
White, where the evil
of
queen
empathy.
tries to kill Snow
As
White
in men,
because
this
she's jealous
empathy
of her
amongst
youth and
women
beauty.
is thought to be nurtured from
Although
an
there is
early
evidence
age
of
and is
instances of
encouraged
this
in
half
reinforced
such
through
as
systematic
Stege's
socialization with
1994
other females.
ethnography of female
This
lawyers,
can be seen
wherein
through
the
the intimate
scarcity of
relationships
opportunities
that
in a
females have
male-dominated
amongst
world.
each other.
Combined with
In these
competitive
intimate friendships, women are more likely to share their feelings and experiences and generally report having deeper relationships with their female friends as a result. Historically, women have also been marginalized.
Women are at a disadvantage in the workplace because they are less likely to
It is
be
interesting to
perceived
note
as
that
good
less
leaders,
power
as
groups
defined
have,
by the
by
macho
necessity,
decider.
usually resorted to
And the
indirect
drama of their
methods of conflict
interpersonal encounters
resolution
with coworkers
as
are
a result
likely to
of
be
being afraid
scrutinized
of
more
provoking
closely.
hostility from
This
higher
leads to a
power
public
groups.
perception problem that
Thus,
limits the
it could be argued
opportunities
that
that women
women
have
use
access
methods
to
of
and
indirect
undermines their
conflict
authority as leaders.
resolution
In fact,
as a
this
result
idea
of
is so pervasive that even other women
the
do
problem
not
with current
believe that their
stereotypes
gender
for
is
men.
right for power.
Men are also at a
For example,
disadvantage as autocratic
and agentic methods of
The problem
management
with
are
the
not in
current
sync with the
stereotypes
times
for all
and are being shown
the
as an
problem with these
increasing
gender
liability
stereotypes,
for
however,
companies,
goes beyond just
as a new
promoting
generation
equality
is
and
preparing
limiting
to
the
possibility
possibility
of
of
gender.
gender.
It goes
As
to
well
the heart of
limiting
what
or
people
inhibiting
feel
a
make a
man's
good
ability
leader,
to
that is the
express feelings
absence of
limits his
positive
ability
feminine
as a leader
quality
and
qualities
mediator
such
of
as
conflict.
empathy and collaborative
This is increasingly
decision-making, which are
important in
directly
companies, and
associated
it
with
is estimated
effective
that
and peaceful
20%
conflict
of a
resolution.
manager's time is spent
The macho
mediating
man is
conflicts
seen as the
between
epitome of
employees.
leadership by many. However, if he is unable to express his emotions or take into account the ideas and experience of others, then the only method of resolving conflict becomes that of force or coercion. Meanwhile, the female is supposed to possess many qualities that would make a perfect leader, such as empathy and collaborative decision-making, but is still not as well respected as man in this
The
position
solution,
due to old
eliminating
cultural
these stereotypes is incredibly difficult
Thus,
to do
gender
as they are
stereotypes
firmly
limit not
embedded in
only
our culture and
individuals, but
society.
also
However,
inhibit the success of the leaders of
carefully
companies and
structured
countries by
leadership
forcing
programming
individuals
such
to
as
behave as
role-playing
either a male
exercises
or
have been
female
shown to
should,
help people
when
acquire
the
and
complete
express
picture of a
empathy in
mediator and
appropriate
leader
ways
should
during
have traits
mediation.
associated with both genders.
Additionally, greater gender integration through company outings and co-ed teams could help women and men of different social standings within the company start to see each other not just as competitors and bosses, but also as human beings. For example, if a man critical of his female superior is able to bond with her, this could cut down on feelings of mistrust of her abilities as supervisors. Additionally, interactions with other genders have been shown to encourage opposite gender traits, which could help others burst out of their